Hi, my name is Annie Ratner, and I'm a junior here at Frisco High School. I play French horn in the band, and I'm also a member of the Greater Dallas Youth Orchestra. This year I decided that I wanted to study interior design, and it kind of did not start that way because I mainly decided to try out and be in ISM so that I could find what I wanted to study. And at first I entered doing marketing, but that changed very quickly. So my quote this year was, "In wisdom gathered over time, I have found that every experience is a form of exploration." I chose this quote because the whole purpose of me being in ISM was because I wanted to explore, because I really did not know what I wanted to do, and I wanted to find out through this entire experience. So at the beginning of the year, I did some research and some interviews, and there's a couple main things that I learned. The first one was the skills, and one of the largest skills of interior design is communication between clients, contractors, and vendors, and of course creativity, because you can't make a home beautiful if you're not creative, and problem solving, which is very important because oftentimes as an interior designer you're hired to fix a home's problems, and so you have to know what you need to do to make spaces more functional. And then also adaptability, because oftentimes your project schedule is going to change, and it's important that you know how to adapt to those changes. The next thing I learned was the process of becoming an interior designer, which starts from going to school for it and then getting an internship, after that working for a firm, and you can't really even be your own business until you go through all those steps to get there. So I learned all about that from my interviews. And then the last thing was the application of interior design. I learned a lot about color, and I learned how important it is for you to pick the right colors for your clients, because it can subconsciously change how they feel about their home, and it can make their lives better if they're surrounded by colors that put them at ease. Also, safety. I learned a lot about how certain materials are harmful to people living in their homes, and interior designers are really the only people that know how to stop your home from becoming a danger to you. And lastly, sustainability. Sustainability is basically the idea of designing your home so that it's ready for the future and it's good for the environment. That way you won't have to be making too many changes in the future. So those are basically all of the different things I learned about through my research and my interviews. So after my interviews, I went and found my mentor. Her name is Kathy Rollins, and she's been a designer for a very long time now. She's based in McKinney, and she's actually been a mentor in the past, which is really good because she has a really good idea of what I need to be doing this year. So far I've done 3 visits. The first one, I went to a model home, and we basically just picked the whole thing apart. And we talked about what were some problems with the model home and what were some really good things that they did with it. And so I got a really idea of how to take what I learned there and use it in the future on my own final product later in the year. The second place we went was the fabric showroom, and in the fabric showroom they had just every kind of fabric you can imagine, curtain rods, pins for furniture, and she showed me this so that I could have an idea of where she gets her materials from, and I also learned about pricing and durability and things like that. And then my last visit, and my most recent one, was the flooring showroom, and I absolutely love the flooring showroom because it was this massive place full of tile and stone and wood and carpet, and I got to take a lot of pictures so that later when I'm doing my final product I have some ideas to pull from about like styles that I like and stuff. So that was probably my favorite thing so far. In the future we're going to visit some art showrooms. I'm going to do some client visits with her, and I'm looking forward to actually going to the sites of her projects. So my original work this year was, I did a study of the evolution of interior design from the 1920s until the 1990s, and then I did a complete analysis and a prediction of what the design might be in the future. And I expected to learn a lot about styles from this and a lot about color palettes, but I was surprised to find that I actually learned a lot about American history along the way, which surprisingly correlates to a lot of the styles within homes. So I'm going to show you some of the research I did first, which was the main part of this whole project. I basically researched the following topics: historical impact, which is basically how history in America made an impact inside homes and the reason why they use certain materials or certain focal points, like, for example, built-in furniture or certain flooring types. And then the second one was color schemes, where I got to learn about why certain colors were used in homes during these certain decades. Also, I did focus points. Focus points are basically, in each decade they had certain things they like to focus on. Maybe it was industrialization, maybe it was minimalism, or in some cases they were trying to make floor plans as uncluttered as possible, and it's all based on what's going on at the time in history. The fourth thing was furnishings, where I talked about the different kinds of things that they placed in the homes, the different ways that they coped with storage problems, and even things such as like wallpaper and flooring and certain kinds of fabrics that they like to use, or even certain kinds of metals that they like to use in their homes. And then the last thing was the actual design styles themselves, which range from traditional to colonial to modern to minimalism. And so each of these kind of were placed in each decade. So I'll show you an example. This was my layout for the 1930s, and every single decade I laid out like this. So that way I could have a really clear idea of how it worked in history, and then I could create a color palette. And what I really liked about doing the color palette was that, like, now that I've created these, when I move forward, I have like things I can choose from. I can go through these decades and say, oh, in this decade they put these colors together and it looked really good, and so I can pull that into maybe a project that I want to do. And so that is one way that this kind of gave me a head start, I guess you could say that. And then I just went through focus points, and then furnishings, and then styles. And in the 1930s it was traditional, colonial, and Art Deco. And so this was the layout for each decade I did, from the 1920s to the 1990s. The second part of my original work was my analysis and my response, and it included an entire analysis of all the design trends, where I went through and I spent a lot of time looking for patterns and when things left, when they came back, or if things showed up and then never came back. And so I went through patterns, different types of furniture, colors, and all these different things, and then I ended up writing some very large, lengthy paragraphs about my analysis. And then the second part of that was I did a response where I predicted what I believe the future could be based on my findings. So I'll show you a little bit of that. So this was my decade analysis, and it was more of just me kind of having a conversation with myself over where these patterns were. And so it took me quite a long time, actually, because I had to look through all these decades and find where things repeated and what kinds of things were important over the years. And so then I did my prediction, and I can tell you a little bit about that. I found out that based on if there was recession, economic growth, war, or no conflict, colors in homes were much different, and their focal points were much different. And so I'll talk to you a little about what I found going forward. In the future of color, right now people are focusing on whites, blacks, grays, woods within their homes, light blues and light greens, and they're trying to go for a more calm, just feeling overall in homes. And the future, I'm guessing that white is probably going to remain a prominent color, because it has been for about 20 years. And I base this off of how from about the 20s to the 40s, navy blue was a huge color, and it had a 30-year lifespan. And then from the 50s from the 60s all the way through the 90s, the avocado green, which is surprisingly a really ugly color, lasted for a really long time, and it was really, really popular. And then once year 2000 showed up, it just kind of dropped off the face of the earth. But white came in, and white has been really prominent in the last couple decades. So that has a really large likelihood to continue. And also I've looked into the fact that wood is probably going to remain a very big deal in homes. Focus points in the future will probably be maximizing floor space, because homes are likely to get smaller based on population increase over time. And minimalism, because with such a small floor space, you don't want to have a ton of things popping out of the walls, because it's going to make it feel more cramped and smaller, which is a pattern I found in the back in the 1920s, when homes were very small and they worked really hard to maximize the floor plan and keep things calm and uncluttered. And then entertainment, I've noticed from about this late 70s into the 80s, entertainment began to become a huge part of homes, and it's just been increasing over time. So I believe that it's likely to continue at that rate. Also, furnishings, just based on what I've said before, probably a lot of built-ins, comfort-focused, healthier furniture, because, for example, right now we have pillows that are good for your necks. Eventually, we're going to start having furniture that's really important to keep your body in a better condition. And then flooring is likely to be things like concrete or wood floors, because concrete is really cheap and it's easy, and wood floors aren't as difficult to take care of sometimes as carpets in certain cases. The only thing about that is the expense. So as far as flooring goes in the future, we might be looking at a cheaper options. And then the futures of style, based on what I found, everything's becoming more eclectic and modern and minimalistic, and so that's basically what we're looking for in the future: more minimalistic homes that are more modern, and maybe we'll see a little bit of the space age like we did in the 1950s and 60s come back. So that's my original work, and I'm looking forward to doing my final product, which is looking like right now it's going to consist of me designing a bedroom with a joint bathroom, and my mentor is going to help me through that, and I'm going to use some of the things I found in my original work to help me out with that. So thank you.